the side of sexual predators. It's utterly disgusting.
It is, and worse than that, if it is just to protect children, why are they setting up an elite police unit that will monitor what we say about illegal immigration and indeed about asylum hotels too? And I was very interesting that Jonathan Hall, KC, who is our terrorism czar,
Labour just called Farage a predator ally for wanting free speech, while their new law lets one minister censor the internet overnight. Watch Nigel torch the hypocrisy.
Jail time for management teams. And, the notion that this is just about child safety, you'll have to explain to us why Section 44 of the Act exists, which allows a single government minister, a single Secretary of State, to unilaterally order Ofcom to rewrite the rules on a whim without parliamentary scrutiny. You'd have to explain why Section 179 exists, which creates a threshold where it is illegal to say something you know to be false, which causes non-trivial psychological harm. Think about that as a threshold relative to incitement for violence. And by the way, we know this Labour government, and I know it's the Tories who birthed all of this and passed it, this Labour government love locking people up for things that they say. So you'll notice nothing we've talked about involves making British people safe. And I know you're in a bad mood, quite rightly, for the disgusting slur on you, but Reform is leading in the polls at 34%. You are favourite to be the next Prime Minister, the most popular political leader in this country. And what Labour are saying is, if you are a British person who is worried about this authoritarian clampdown on freedom of speech, you are on the side of sexual predators. It's utterly disgusting.
It is, and worse than that, if it is just to protect children, why are they setting up an elite police unit that will monitor what we say about illegal immigration and indeed about asylum hotels too? And I was very interesting that Jonathan Hall, KC, who is our terrorism czar, he said very, very clearly this morning on LBC, I think it was, I'm afraid the Online Safety Act is not going to be the solution. So, Peter Kyle, I ask you, is the government's own terrorism czar on the side of Jimmy Savile as well? Well, you know what? I've asked for an apology. We're not going to get one. I think perhaps the best thing we can do is to sign the petition to repeal the Online Safety Act. That's what I'm going to do today. I think it makes sense. I'm deeply worried about the implications for free speech. And what is absolutely clear to me is a problem that runs right through British government is that legislation passed by the Conservatives, supported by Labour, no doubt aided and abetted all the way through by civil servants, none of them have got a clue what they're doing. With people like Zia, we've actually got the real expertise. So, Mr. Kyle, can I have an apology, please?
Look, I am not going to pretend this is a polite disagreement anymore. The mask has slipped so completely that we can see the machinery grinding behind it. When a Labour MP stands up and says that anyone worried about the biggest clampdown on free speech since the Licensing Act of 1662 is on the side of child abusers, I know exactly what game is being played. I have seen it in Canada, in Germany, in France, and now it has landed in Westminster with a thud. The trick is always the same take a horror: everyone hates child abuse, terrorism, racism, and then staple every dissenting voice to that horror so no one dares defend the dissenter. That way you can pass a law that lets one minister rewrite the rules of the internet overnight and no one in the Commons even gets a vote. That is not child protection. That is political protection. Let me lay out what the Online Safety Act really does, stripped of the slogans. Section 44 hands the Secretary of State a blank check. The minister can order Ofcom to change the illegal content guidance without Parliament seeing the draft, debating it, or amending it. A single tweet, a single blog post, even a private WhatsApp forward can be reclassified as harmful the next morning. The offense of false communication causing non-trivial psychological harm in Section 179 is even more slippery. It does not require intent, only that someone, somewhere, claims distress. That is the same legal hook used in Scotland's Hate Crime Act to haul a man into court for filming his dog doing a Nazi salute. Once the precedent is set, the chilling effect does the rest. Platforms will overcensor rather than risk 10% of global turnover and jail time for their executives. I have already seen Facebook preemptively delete posts, quoting Churchill on Islam, and YouTube demonetize entire channels for hate, when all they did was read crime statistics from the Home Office's own website. And yet the same people who demand this iron rule still cannot keep our children safe in Rotherham, Telford, Rochdale, Oxford, Newcastle, or any of the other towns where thousands of girls were groomed, while police and councils looked the other way. The J report was crystal clear. Officers feared being called racist more than they feared letting rapists walk free. Now the same impulse is hardwired into statute. Say the wrong thing about the ethnicity of grooming gangs, and you can be deleted from the internet, fined, or worse. Meanwhile, the perpetrators in those towns continue to get lighter sentences than people who post rap lyrics on Instagram. I am not exaggerating. In 2023, a man in Manchester received 18 months in prison for an offensive meme. In the same week, a grooming gang ringleader had his sentence reduced on appeal. That is the moral universe this act entrenches. The minister keeps saying the act is world-leading. He is right. It leads the world in handing arbitrary power to the executive. Even the EU's Digital Services Act, bad as it is, still requires a vote in the European Parliament before the Commission can expand the list of systemic risks. Our act needs only a signature on a ministerial order. That is why Elon Musk's reposting of the Katie Lamb speech and the Telford case transcript was wiped from search results in the UK within hours. Not because the material was illegal, it was already given in open court, but because it embarrassed the establishment. When facts become embarrassing, the modern left bans the facts. I keep hearing, but the Tories passed it. Yes, and shame on them. But Labour cheered it through, demanded it go further, and now wields it with relish. Sir Keir Starmer stood up in the Commons and backed every line. David Lammy said the act should be used to silence right-wing populists and boasted that Labour would finish the job. Jess Phillips declared that free speech warriors were just men worried they can harass women anymore. That is the level of debate. If you object to state censorship, you must be a predator. It is the same rhetorical trick used by every authoritarian from Robespierre to the Stasi. Conflate dissent with deviance and watch the public applaud as rights vanish. Let us talk about the elite police unit that is being set up to monitor harmful content about illegal immigration and asylum hotels. The Home Office has quietly advertised for online harms liaison officers whose remit includes identifying narratives that undermine public trust in the asylum system. Translation: if I post a video showing a hotel full of fighting-age men in designer trainers who have just crossed the channel, and I ask why they are being housed at public expense, I can expect a knock on the door. Meanwhile, the Metropolitan Police still refuses to record the ethnicity of grooming gang suspects because it might stigmatize communities. I am not allowed to notice who the rapists are, but I am not allowed to notice who the illegal migrants are either. That is not safety, that is tyranny wearing a child's face. I am told this is all necessary to stop far-right radicalization. Yet the Prevent program's own figures show that the fastest-growing terror threat in Britain is Islamist extremism, not white nationalism. Last year, 3 Islamist plots reached the stage of active planning. The number of far-right plots was 0. But Prevent still spends more time monitoring schoolchildren who share memes about Tommy Robinson than it does tracking returning ISIS fighters. The double standard is so blatant that even the government's terrorism reviewer, Jonathan Hall KC, admitted on LBC that the Online Safety Act will not stop grooming gangs and might even hinder investigations by driving evidence underground. When the man appointed to guard us from terror says the law is counterproductive, perhaps the Home Secretary should listen. I keep thinking back to the 1980s when the left claimed it was the side of free speech. I marched with them against Section 28. I cheered when they tore down the blasphemy laws. Now the same people demand prison for misgendering and fines for quoting Leviticus. The reversal is total. The modern left has become the new Puritan censor, burning witches online instead of in the village square. The only difference is that today's pyre is algorithmic shadow bans, demonetization, debanking. You lose your job not at the stake, but at the HR meeting. So what do? I sign the petition to repeal the act. I back every legal challenge, every judicial review, every crowd-funded case. I will not let them memory hole the victims of Rotherham or the boatloads crossing the channel. I will keep saying what I see, because history shows that when governments criminalize noticing, the next thing they criminalize is remembering. I am not on the side of predators, I am on the side of the girls who were raped while the state looked away and then called their defenders far-right. I am on the side of the taxpayer who watches his town fill up with young men from safe countries claiming asylum and is told he is spreading hate if he asks questions. I am on the side of every small blogger, podcaster, and citizen journalist who now risks bankruptcy for telling the truth. If that makes me the enemy in Sir Keir Starmer's Britain, so be it. I would rather be a free man in a jail cell than a silent slave in a safe